This documentary essay is about the Baha'i faith. The introductory segment which follows is an attempt to place this new religion into a context which can be understood and accepted by all of us. This will require the redefinition of some value-laden words like faith, religion, revelation, and God. Words like these are full of historical connotations and are, more often than not, the cause of misunderstanding and division and conflict among us. Across our globe, about half of us believe in some kind of transcendental spiritual power which drives our civilization. Some billions of us believe in an Abrahamic, supernatural God. Some in the ancient Hindu gods, and some in a wisdom tradition like Buddhism, for example, devoid of a concept of a personal God. About 1 billion of us are either agnostic, atheists, secular materialists, or secular humanists, all products of the 17th and 18th century Enlightenment, relying upon human reason and a reductionist scientific method to understand a universe consisting of particles in motion, facts and happenings, devoid of meaning. As the Nobel laureate physicist Steven Weinberg famously said, all the explanatory arrows point downward, from societies to people to organs to cells to biochemistry to chemistry and ultimately to physics. The more we know of the universe, he said, the more meaningless it appears. The Baha'i faith is the harbinger of a new worldview in which faith and reason are seen as complementary paths to human understanding and progress. Amazingly, these new articles of faith, enunciated by Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Baha'i faith, whose life spanned the 19th century, are finding confirmation in a new, emerging scientific worldview which reaches beyond science itself and invites a new view of God, the sacred, and ourselves. It includes within its purview not only hard science, but the arts, ethics, politics, and spirituality. The new science of complexity is leading us toward the reintegration of science with such attributes as consciousness, choice, values, meaning, and purposive doing, all of which are as real in the universe as are particles in motion. Stuart Kauffman, a renowned complexity scientist, explains that while life, agency, value, and doing presumably have physical explanations in any specific organism, the evolutionary emergence of these cannot be derived from or reduced to physics alone. In his new book, Reinventing the Sacred, he shows that the evolution of the biosphere, of human economic life, and human history are at least partially not describable by natural law, a claim which flies in the face of our settled convictions since Galileo, Newton, and the Enlightenment. Already, we're far beyond pure reductionism into an emergent universe. The vastness of the universe at all levels of complexity, molecules, species, and human history, leaves room for a spontaneous creativity in the way the universe unfolds at these levels. A creativity that we cannot predict, The radical implication is that we live in an emergent universe in which ceaseless, unforeseeable creativity arises and surrounds us. And since we can neither pre-state nor predict all that will happen, reason alone is an insufficient guide to living our lives forward. This emergent universe is the bedrock of the sacred that we must reinvent. An unknowable God, not transcendental, but rather the engine, the motive force embedded in his creation. In that ceaseless creativity in the universe, the biosphere and the human life itself, we can find one sense of God that we all can share. The Baha'i faith is the youngest of the world's independent religions. Its founder, Baha'u'llah, is regarded by Baha'is as the most recent in a long line of spiritual teachers or manifestations of God that stretches back beyond recorded time, including Abraham, Moses, Buddha, Zoroaster, Christ, and Muhammad. The manifestations of God are a part of that complex web of creation, a part of human history, unique, emergent phenomena in the unfolding of human culture and civilization, a unique source of our evolution as spiritual man. The central theme of Baha'u'llah's message is that humanity is one single race, and that the day has come for its unification in one global society. His revolutionary message has set in motion historical forces that are breaking down traditional barriers of race, class, creed, and nation, and that will in time give birth to a universal civilization. The principal challenge facing the peoples of the earth is to recognize the fact of their organic oneness and to assist in the necessary process of unification. Baha'u'llah taught that there is one God, whose successive revelations have been the chief civilizing force in human history. The agents of this process have been the manifestations of God, whose common purpose has been to bring the human race to spiritual and moral maturity. Technology is shrinking the globe we live on, and we must collectively accommodate to this reality. Building a peaceful global society is imperative. Among the principles which the Baha'i faith promotes as vital to the achievement of this goal are the abandonment of all forms of exclusiveness, insularity, and prejudice, the establishment of full equality of opportunity for women and men, recognition of the unity and progressive nature of religious truth, recognition that true religion is in harmony with science, reason, and the unfettered pursuit of knowledge, the responsibility of each person to independently search for truth, without the intervention of clergy or any other so-called authoritative intermediary. The elimination of extremes of poverty and wealth on a global scale. The realization of universal education. And the establishment of a global commonwealth of nations based upon federalist principles. With every passing decade since the inauguration of the Baha'i faith in 1844, concepts that were bewildering or unthinkable when Baha'u'llah first enunciated them, have increasingly been accepted by leaders of thought and public opinion. The entire human race is becoming increasingly conscious of its common origins, its oneness, and of the earth as an interdependent organism. Baha'is are therefore confident that the vision of global peace and prosperity set forth in the Baha'i teachings will eventually be embraced by all of humanity. Whether in the areas of governance, community organization, economic justice, social and economic development, the advancement of women, moral development, or human rights, the Baha'i teachings offer unique perspectives on contemporary global trends and movements of social and intellectual change. We begin our documentary about the Baha'i faith with an introductory discussion of the newest ideas in the realm of science which support the Baha'i notion that religion and science are complementary paths to human knowledge and progress, and may in fact be converging toward a common view of reality. We are, so to speak, reinventing the sacred and providing a new, unifying language and a new worldview that can speak convincingly to both the secular humanist and the devoutly religious. We are living in a period of profound social and political transition. To borrow a phrase from the newly emerging science of complexity, we are balancing on the edge of order and chaos. But complexity theory has shown that this seemingly precarious condition is in fact common to all large, complex, dynamical systems. The edge of order and chaos is a constantly shifting battleground between stagnation on the one hand and turbulence on the other. It is the one fluid state in which a complex system can be spontaneous, adaptive, and alive. Complexity scientists study the behavior of large, apparently chaotic systems composed of many, many interacting units or agents. For the molecular biologist, the units are molecules. For the neurophysiologist, neurons. For the biologist, species. For the economist, consumers or corporations. For the political scientist, interest groups, political parties, or nation-states. All may be viewed as discrete units at different levels of complexity, constantly organizing and reorganizing into larger and larger structures through competition and mutual accommodation. In other words, through adaptive behavior. Over time, new emergent structures form. Millions of molecules organize to form a cell. Cells differentiate to form specialized organs within an embryo. Neurons connect via synapses to form neural networks, and these networks combine to form that most miraculous of organs, the brain. Species interact to form ecosystems. Consumers and corporations form markets. Humans procreate and form families. Families coalesce into tribes and communities. Informal communities organize themselves into city-states and then into unified nation-states. According to complexity theory, this is the natural behavior of complex living organisms, like the evolving global civilization of which we are a part. Researchers from many scientific fields are discovering common laws of behavior for all complex organisms. They tend to share the vision of an underlying unity in the natural world, and a common theoretical framework for complexity that can illuminate nature and humankind alike. It is axiomatic, for example, that a tiny event in one place can have an enormous effect in another. But when scientists started to pay attention to this phenomenon within nonlinear, complex systems in their particular disciplines, they began to realize just how profound and ubiquitous a principle this really is. In example after example, whether in the field of quantum physics, microbiology, or the social sciences, the finding was the same. Everything is connected, and often with incredible sensitivity. The social analog of this principle is the organic connectedness of humanity, and it follows logically that our behavior as individuals, as communities, or as nations affects the rest of the complex organism, which is our world. A century before complexity scientists began to quantify these fundamental rules of behavior in complex systems, the underlying spiritual principles of the oneness of mankind and unity in diversity were clearly articulated by Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Baha'i faith, a prophetic figure whose profound influence on our modern world is just beginning to be acknowledged. Whether our civilization continues to advance, balanced on that precarious evolutionary edge, or losing its balance, slides into reactionary stagnation, or into revolutionary anarchy and war, depends upon our collective ability to understand the forces at play in the social, political, and spiritual dynamics of our time. To achieve an orderly transition to a new, emergent political order in today's interdependent world will require our complete acceptance and assimilation of these fundamental spiritual principles, and a more rational way of thinking about the future of the planet in global terms, beyond the nation-state. Baha'u'llah clearly describes the driving forces of our world as spiritual in nature. Not only are we spiritual beings, but the entire enterprise that we call civilization is itself a spiritual process. A process in which the human mind discovers and assimilates ideas, laws, and principles, and then gives them expression in the purposive, technical, social, and political forms and structures of an evolving civilization. Students of complexity have argued that biological evolution and cultural evolution are simply two aspects of the same thing. When the molecular structure of DNA was unraveled in 1953, it was found that this building block of all living organisms contains instructions for making all the things that the cell needs to function, and makes a copy of all this genetic data every time the cell divides. Evolution has built the genetic code into the structure of the DNA molecule itself. Could social evolution also be the unfoldment of structure based upon information encoded in the genes of society? Applying these findings in molecular biology to a study of cultural evolution, some scientists began to explore the notion that the genes of culture are beliefs, which in turn are recorded in the basic DNA of culture, language. It could be said that this same idea was expressed, perhaps more poetically, in the Gospel according to John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The basic DNA of culture, the Word, expressed by the earliest messengers of God, gave meaning and moral direction to human self-conscious life on this planet. The Word took the form of parables, admonitions, and prohibitions, relevant to the time and place in which they were revealed, in order to provide guidance and a catalyst for human evolution. In this context, God is not transcendental, but rather the engine, the driving force, embedded within its creation. Baha'u'llah tells us that God is unknowable. God's attributes may be discerned in the physical universe. Our knowledge of the laws underlying its operation is continuously evolving, but we cannot attain to the knowledge of the essence of God directly. The only knowledge we possess of a universal consciousness, of God, of our relationship to Him and to His creation, of the moral laws which define our social relationships, and of God's purpose, is communicated to us through a process of continuous and progressive revelation, through the Word, revealed by special messengers who have emerged throughout human history. Baha'is refer to these phenomena, these divine luminaries, as manifestations of God. Baha'u'llah writes, "To every discerning and illuminated heart it is evident that God, the unknowable essence, the divine being, is immensely exalted beyond every human attribute. Far be it from His glory that human tongue should adequately recount His praise, or that human heart comprehend His fathomless mystery. He is, and hath ever been, veiled in the ancient eternity of His essence, and will remain in His reality, everlastingly hidden from the sight of men. The door of the knowledge of the Ancient of Days being thus closed in the face of all beings, the source of infinite grace hath caused those luminous gems of holiness to appear out of the realm of the Spirit in the noble form of the human temple, and be made manifest unto all men, that they may impart unto the world the mysteries of the unchangeable being, and tell of the subtleties of His imperishable essence." Manifestations of God, the founders of the great religious systems of the world, are the source of our knowledge of God. In fact, they are the only source. This is what Christ meant when He said, "No man cometh unto the Father, but by me." When understood in the context of His spiritual station as the manifestation of God of His time, it is consistent with Baha'u'llah's teaching. But if interpreted as an expression of finality or historical exclusiveness, it is in fact contrary to Christ's meaning. Baha'u'llah teaches that all the manifestations of God are essentially one. He explains that they all have a dual nature, one physical and the other spiritual. In their spiritual role, they speak with the voice of God Himself, and in their human role, they represent the personal aspect of an otherwise unknowable God. They are, so to speak, the Word made flesh, a form which we humans can understand and relate to. Christ tried to explain to the Pharisees who He was. He said, "Before Abraham was, I am." With this abstruse statement, which was misunderstood by the Pharisees, He was confirming His spiritual identity with Abraham. He was speaking of the pre-existent, the timeless Spirit, which animates all the manifestations of God. As the prophets of God are one, the religions, which have evolved from their teachings, are essentially one. Referring to the apparently different world religions, Baha'u'llah explained, These firmly established and mighty systems have proceeded from one source and are the rays of one light. That they differ one from another is to be attributed to the varying requirements of the ages in which they were promulgated. Not surprising, then, that many of the principles enunciated by the messengers of the past can be found in the words of Baha'u'llah. But in addition, he has revealed new teachings which are relevant to our present conditions and our capacity to act upon them, such as, for example, the imperative of viewing our world as a single organism of interdependent entities and the human race as one family. Consistent with this belief in the oneness of mankind and the oneness of religion is the announcement by Baha'u'llah that religion must be the cause of unity, harmony, and agreement among mankind. If it be the cause of discord and hostility, if it leads to separation and conflict, it's the antithesis of religion, and its absence from the world would be preferable. Baha'u'llah admonishes us, therefore, to reject all doctrines of finality and exclusiveness and all forms of prejudice and fanaticism as destructive of the foundation of human solidarity and of the goal of a world characterized by unity in diversity. Can the human species avoid chaos and conflict in its social and political behavior? Will it have the foresight and collective will to begin to apply the central unifying principle proclaimed by Baha'u'llah, that the earth is but one country, and mankind its citizens? Does the manifestation of God play any role in the unfolding of man's social and political organization on this planet? How should Baha'u'llah, the 19th century prophet, be viewed in a modern, skeptical, technological world? Are his teachings an anachronism, or are they a spiritual leaven for a new world? Are Baha'u'llah's teachings, in fact, the catalyst in an organic process already underway, which will evolve over time into a newly emergent global civilization? With these questions in mind, we will explore the turbulent period of the past 2 centuries, and the still obscure but no less amazing story of the awe-inspiring and charismatic figures Sayyid Ali Muhammad, called the Bab, and Mirza Hussein Ali, surnamed Baha'u'llah. Both were born in Persia during the reign of Fath Ali Shah Qajar. They were contemporaries who never met each other, but whose lives were nevertheless intimately and mysteriously connected. They are the founders of the Baha'i faith.